Hey Raven, I want to start out by saying that you are my favorite narrator on YouTube. Thank you. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of excellent narrators that I frequently listen to, same, but you definitely are my favorite. I have two experiences that I would like to share with you, starting with one that happened back in April, when I was on my way back from the NASCAR dirt track race night in Bristol, Tennessee with my husband, my father-in-law, and my husband's cousin. As I stated above, it was a night race, which means we didn't get on the road to head back home to Indiana until after 11 p.m. that night. My husband's cousin was the one driving, so he put our destination into his phone's GPS for the quickest way back, as 3 out of the 4 of us had to work the next day. Thankfully, we all worked second shift. Anyways, for whatever reason, the GPS took us through Virginia. I'm assuming it cut off some of the travel time, but I'm not sure because I did end up falling asleep sometime after the strange incident occurred. It was around 2:30 to 3 a.m., and we were on the same very back country roads in the middle of nowhere, Virginia. I was still a little pumped up, as it was my first time going to a NASCAR race, so my husband and I were chatting in the back seat, while my cousin and father-in-law chatted in the front. We were the only ones on the road, as it was a very late Sunday night. The speed limit was 55 or 60, I don't remember exactly, but his cousin was obeying the speed limit. So when we see headlights come up flying behind us out of nowhere, we were a little surprised. We all started making jokes about how we were in backwoods Virginia, and that was probably the welcome wagon. Now, this road was very curvy at times, but the stretch that we were on at that particular moment was a straightaway. So, we could see a fair distance in front of and behind us, and we could see a vehicle approaching. Fast. I also need to mention that this was only a 2-lane road. When the vehicle got close enough, we could see that it was an ambulance. It didn't have its sirens or emergency lights on, but whoever was driving it was going way over the speed limit. They rode our bumper for a few minutes before erratically swerving over into the opposite lane to pass us. We had a clear view of the inside as it passed, and we could see that all the lights in the cab were on, as if they were transporting someone. But there was no one back there. Not an EMT, nobody. We could see the black gurney in the upright position, but no one was on it. I remember thinking that it was strange and trying to get a look at the driver because, 1, he was driving kind of recklessly, and 2, why would the lights be on in the back if there were no patients back there? But I couldn't see a driver. I couldn't see anyone. Once it passed, it took off like a bat out of you-know-where. About 3/4 of a mile up the road, it began to get very curvy again, but then straightened back out after a little bit. We should have seen the ambulance again, and we should have been able to at least see it in the distance on the part of the road that straightened back out, because there's no way an ambulance could have taken those curves at the speed that it was going. I would say that it had to be going at least 85 to 90 miles an hour. There were no intersections or turnoffs. We were on a country highway in the sticks with no residential homes nor businesses. If the ambulance had crashed, we would have seen some evidence of a crash. Even if it flipped and landed off the road out of sight, we would have seen damage to the trees and brush that lined the highway. Just something. But there was nothing. And we did look because we all thought that it was just so weird. My father-in-law asked if anybody got a good look at the driver, and I explained that I tried but wasn't able to. I'm not really sure if it was because of the glare of the lights that I couldn't see a driver, but nobody else saw one either. After that, we referred to it as the ghost ambulance. The second experience happened to me at work earlier tonight, and has actually happened 3 times in the past week, all at work. So, I really enjoy all of the stories you read, but the Glitch in the Matrix ones are my favorite. I listen mostly at my place of employment because it keeps me from being bored to tears while I work. Thank you for that. I need to explain my job and its boring details in order for my story to make sense, so I apologize. I'm a machine operator at a plastics factory. Basically, the company I work for makes headlights and turn signal casings for cars and trucks. Most of the parts that I work with have a left and a right part. My job is to take them off the belt as they come down, cut the parts off of what is called the sprue, the little plastic pieces the parts are connected to when the machine spits them out, and pack them into their respective totes or boxes for shipping. The packaging has individual slots for each part to fit into nicely and neatly. Also, the parts are identical. Most nights, I'm operating 2 machines and you have to find what I call your groove in order to keep up with whatever machine you're responsible for. Otherwise, you'll have parts piling up under the conveyor belt and you don't want that. The parts come down the belt, attached to the sprue. This is called a shot. So to be clear, each shot contains a left and a right part. What works for me is to clear the belt, which is anywhere between 3 to 6 shots, stack them on the table, and then cut each left part, pack them, and then repeat for the right. Now for the weird stuff. The incident that happened last Thursday was actually the weirdest, which was the second time this happened. I had about 3 parts left before the set I was working on was full. So I finished the process that I just described, put my last 3 parts in each tote, rights and lefts, grabbed the lids and put them on the totes. There were no parts on the table, just empty sprues that I had not yet thrown away. However, when I was getting ready to take the full totes over to the skids, I glanced back down at my workstation and there were 6 parts still attached to the sprues, just laying there on the table, like I had cut the rights and packed them. I did a double take and quickly took the lid off of the left part's tote, and it was completely full. Confused, I checked the rights tote, but it was as it should be as well. I checked the floor and the waste bin to see if there were 6 right parts that had somehow fallen. Maybe I'd cut them and forgot, but there was nothing. And why would I cut 6 extra parts when I knew I only had 3 slots to fill? And then why only the rights? It just didn't make sense. For this particular part, it is very easy to spot if you put it in the wrong tote, a left in the right or vice versa. And the slots of the totes are just the right size for one individual part, so you can't put 2 parts in one slot. There is no reason there should have been any parts on the table, because if one part is bad, and you have to throw it out, you also have to throw out the opposite side automatically to keep things even. And besides, I haven't even had any bad parts in that machine that night. So where did the extra parts come from? As I said, I've had 2 other similar experiences at work, but that one was the most detailed instance. Also, I remember right before it happened, my feet and legs felt a little strange, like I was wading through warm water. Afterwards, I thought to myself, that must be what it feels like walking through dimensions. Because that definitely felt very glitchy. Hello, Raven. I'm a huge fan of your reading and love that you encourage people to share their strange and unexplainable stories. I've been listening for about a year now, and I thought it might be time to share my own experience. Since I can remember, I've had dreams that later come to fruition, or end up affecting my awake life in some way. These are just a couple of examples of such dreams. I graduated high school in June of 1998 and gave birth to my firstborn in September of 1999. Shortly after graduation, but prior to getting pregnant, I began having a recurring dream that I had not graduated. In my dreams, I always found myself back in school, lost and trying to figure out my class schedule. I would be wandering that semi-familiar hallway and telling each faceless student that I came across that I didn't belong there because I'd already graduated. I would wake up feeling strange, but just chalked it up to the pressure put on me by my parents to get my high school diploma. Fast forward 17 years, and my oldest child graduates high school a year early. The school let everyone know that although they were still waiting for the scores from the final test, they were going to go ahead with the graduation ceremony. One day in July, my kiddo was watching a softball game and happened to run into her principal. He told her that the test results were finally in, and unfortunately she had failed by just 2 points. She would be required to return to the school next year and remain in attendance until she could retake the test and pass it. So, my dream had actually come true, only not in a way that I ever could have imagined. I am happy to say that she did pass the retake, and only spent about 2 weeks there before she was done for good. Not once have I had that dream since. The last thing I want to add is that this dream phenomena has been a thing that my mom has experienced forever. She's had dreams of people passing away, and they always do within a few weeks. Sometimes it's even people who aren't sickly or expected to pass. We're of indigenous descent, and I'm not sure if that contributes at all. I really would love to learn more about any special gifts that I may have been given, but I don't really know where to start. Story 2 is about a possible abduction. On the night of July 9th, 2023, I had a dream that I was in a hospital setting and appeared to be getting prepped for some sort of procedure. All staff had their faces completely covered, and I don't recall any of them speaking. I was the only one to actually say anything. I somehow felt or got the impression that they were about to insert an IV, so I told them about the scar tissue in the crooks of my arm from years of plasma donations. I explained that I usually have to get IVs in the back of my hand. I remember there being 3 people in the room, and they all exchanged a quick glance before I felt the IV going in, and that was it. I also recall not being able to see any features of their faces, not even the eyes. They all had masks and goggles on, and the goggles seemed to be reflecting the bright, sterile lights in such a manner so as to keep me from seeing their eyes. I woke up what felt like hours later. After a bit, I thought back to my dream and looked at my right hand. And I just so happened to see what looked to be a scab from an IV right on a vein. Exactly like I've had so many times before when actually being in the hospital. I can't explain it, and my boyfriend chooses to believe that my cat must have scratched me during the night. I don't feel like that makes sense since it wasn't a scratch, but rather a tiny puncture wound. Hey guys, I'm a longtime listener, and I finally came around to having time to send my story to you. I wanted to share this to help out younger generations to realize that things are not always as innocent as they seem. Also, to be more aware of authoritative figures that may have more nefarious means than our young child naivety may or may not recognize. I truly hope that this helps someone, just as your podcast has helped me. So, thank you for that. Anyways, here goes. I'm a female, born and raised in New Jersey, who grew up in the 90s. I was born in '88. And the story happened when I was 11 years old and in 7th grade. I was young for my class, and I actually started high school when I was 13. One weekend night, I was having a sleepover at my house with 3 of my friends. Everyone got dropped off at my house, and then we decided how much fun it would be to go to the new Walmart that was just built a town over from us. You know, because Walmart is so cool and all. This was different, because we were all used to stores being all together in a mall indoors, and this new Walmart was a strip mall, having some other stores down the length of the newly built property. There was a beauty product store, a chocolatier, then a shoe store. So it was a preteen girl's dream area. Yes, they had strip malls back then too, but they were usually businesses and convenience stores, not shops that a bunch of preteen girls would want to visit. This is important later on. So, my dad, being the awesome parent he always has been, dropped us off at around 6 p.m. at Walmart, and said he would come pick us up when we were ready, but it had to be by 9 p.m., when most stores would be closed or closing, and it was getting late. I had my brick of a Samsung cell phone to call him when we were ready, and we lived about 15 to 20 minutes away, so we were all set. We all proceed to get out of the car, Kelly, Alex, Christy, and myself. We said goodbye and waved while my dad waited to make sure that we got into the store okay. I know this may seem weird to some people, or irresponsible of my dad to just drop us off alone, but this was the norm back then for many of my friends and myself. He knew where we were. Their parents knew what we were doing. We had cell phones to call if we needed anything, and we were trusted. This I cannot emphasize enough. We were good kids, so what was the problem, right? Other people. Other creepy, terrible adults were the problem. So we were all giggling and making jokes amongst ourselves, walking around this huge new store that we had never seen nor been in before. To be honest, it was awesome. The 4 of us meandered through the beauty aisles, talking about stuff preteen girls love to talk about, all the while screwing around harmlessly. Maybe chasing and messing with each other for an aisle or two, but that's it. The only thing that could be considered bad would be when Alex grabbed one of the latex rubber gloves that were dispersed throughout the store on the structural poles that were there for the employees to use for cleaning and sanitizing purposes. She grabbed one of the gloves out of the box that was opened and blew it up like a balloon. We all smacked each other a bit with it and tried to keep it off the ground for another aisle or so. We weren't destroying anything or being too disruptive, besides the giggling and joking around, having a grand old time together. Mind you, it was getting later, near the store's closing time, and less people were walking around in the Walmart. If we saw anyone in the aisles, we were always respectful kids and would stop screwing around. Except for the giggling. It was cool to feel the freedom of being an adult. Getting to walk around the store and buy things with our own money that our parents may or may not have given us still, but we hadn't a care in the world, and decided to buy some snacks and nail polish to go along with the movies we were planning on renting from the in-town VHS store when my dad came and got us later. We proceeded to the register, as it was about 8 p.m., and we still wanted to check out the beauty store, the chocolatier, and maybe if we had time, the Payless shoe store at the end of the strip. This was going to be an awesome night, and I was pumped to have my friends sleeping over without a care in the world. We get to the register, and I offered to pay for anything since we were sleeping over at my house, and my dad gave me the money for just that reason. Everyone respectfully declined, because their parents had given them money too. Alex went first, bought the nail polish and some lip gloss. Kelly paid next and bought some lotion and body sprays. Christy bought some Oreos and chips. And then it was my turn. I bought some hair twisties and a bunch of candy. While I was gathering my items in my purse, everyone had started to proceed to the exit, assuming the next was behind them and ready to head down to the next stores outside along the strip mall. Before I could leave the register, there was an older woman who was in line next to me. I noticed her standing behind me, but besides a quick backwards glance and a smile towards her, I was blissfully unaware of anything else. Right as I was gathering my items that I'd bought and placing my plastic Walmart shopping bag into my purse, she grabbed my forearm gently and leaned in to say something to me. I was thrown off for a second as she whispered into my ear, "Honey, please be careful. Those two men behind me have been following you girls all throughout the store. Every time I've seen you four, they were there too, watching you girls." I looked at her speechless, and I looked behind her, seeing two men in their late 20s to mid-30s standing behind her, watching our whole interaction carefully. They both looked clean-cut, had short hair, buttoned-up collared shirts and slacks, and one had glasses on. I said, "Oh my gosh, thank you," quietly, and walked quickly to catch up with my friends who had already gotten almost to the exit in the time that the woman had stopped me. I caught up to them and told them in a scared voice quickly what the woman had said, and we all instinctively looked back. While the woman was still at the register paying, the men were behind her. Our line of sight connected, and the two men put down whatever BS item they were quote-unquote buying, barreled past the woman who had stopped me, and started briskly walking towards us. Kelly yelped, and we all instinctively started to run fast. All scared and not understanding the true gravity of the situation we were now unwillingly in. I yelled, "Run to the next store, guys!" And as we got through Walmart's exit, we went right to head toward the rest of the stores in the strip. It was that, or the somewhat lit parking lot with few cars and even fewer people left in it, and nowhere for us to go nor escape. My gut told me to get into a store where there were people and to hurry. We tried the beauty supply store, but we saw it was closed. Then the chocolatier was also closed. We finally saw the lights on the Payless shoe store, shining bright like a beacon, beckoning us into safety. We ran in there, all yelling and crying, not knowing why these men were chasing four preteen girls. The woman in the store seemed shocked when we all barged through the doors, all yelling and speaking loudly, "Please help us! These men are chasing us!" We began to say what the woman who had stopped me had just said. The Payless worker seemed to be alone, and was in the midst of closing out the register when we had barged in. The woman, that was shorter than some of us, listened to our pleas and quickly said, "Okay, girls, get behind me." As we all watched in horror as the two men ran into the store. She said to the men calmly, "Can I help you?" The man with the glasses spoke and said, "We need to take these girls back with us to Walmart right now." She asked them what for. They wouldn't answer her and started to move forward, trying to get past her, as she had both of her arms outstretched, blocking us safely behind her small, petite frame. She said, "What do you need these young girls for?" Glasses then reached around her side and grabbed Kelly's purse out of her hand while saying, "They stole something, and we need to take them back there now." I yelled, "No, we didn't. He's lying." The lady slightly turned her head to the right while backing us up behind her and asked us, "Girls, is that true? Did anyone take something without paying?" We all collectively yelled, "No!" as we proceeded to pull out receipts and our bags with our fully paid items. None of us had taken anything. None of us were like that, especially not at that age. Glasses, being the only man out of the two that spoke, gave Kelly her purse back, mind you, without even looking in it, and then started ripping the rest of our purses out of our hands, He kept Christie's in his hands now as he dropped mine and Alex's on the floor in front of him. He then proceeded to rifle through Christie's bag nonsensically. The woman, clearly noticing this and feeling something was wrong, asked, "What exactly did they steal then?" Glasses, still doing all the talking, proceeded to suddenly drop Christie's bag and pick mine up off the floor next. Glasses then took out my makeup pouch out of my purse. All that was in there was some used hair ties, butterfly clips, lip gloss, and an eyeshadow palette. The new pack of hair ties that I had just bought was still in my shopping bag. Mind you, neither man ever took my shopping bag out of my hand, only my purse. In fact, we all had our shopping bags still in our hands from when we tried to show our receipts to them when they first accused us. Mind you, the men never once looked at our receipts or our purchased items in our Walmart plastic shopping bags. Probably the first thing you would do as a loss prevention worker accusing said customer of theft, right? Well, they never did. Glasses proceeded to rifle through my makeup bag, grab my bright frosty blue eyeshadow, which was big in the early 2000s, and looked banging to be honest, and he said, "Aha, what's this here?" My big mouth could not take the disrespect anymore. Being from New Jersey, yeah, we're big on that here. And I said, "That's not new. Are you kidding me? Look at it, it's clearly been used multiple times." The woman looked at me and then back at the men and said, "Sir, that doesn't look brand new to me at all. There's no way she could have just stolen that." This whole time, the four of us girls were intermittently yelling out that we didn't do anything, and that we were clearly being wrongfully accused. The men both then looked at each other, as Glasses dropped my purse and walked back towards the other man, who was standing there quietly watching us the whole time, blocking the exit/entrance door. Glasses leaned in and the silent man whispered something in his ear as Glasses nodded in agreement, while looking back at us, as we stood behind this brave and wonderful woman who had become four young girls' protector with neither hesitation nor question. While they were conferring with each other quietly, our second woman protector of the night spoke up. "How about I see some ID? You men must have some work identification if you're loss prevention for Walmart, right?" They looked at her sharply, and the quiet man whispered something else to Glasses. Glasses then said, "We don't have to show you anything. They are in the wrong here, and they need to come with us, or we're calling the police and their parents." The woman then said assuredly, "Okay, what if I walk them back over there with you?" Glasses quickly and emphatically said, "No, we will take them. You've done enough to impede our work tonight." Our protector said, "Okay, then how about I call the police and they can come meet us here, and we'll figure out what's really going on." This is the one and only time the quiet man spoke, and he said, "No need, ma'am. We'll just let these girls off with a warning and tell them that this is their one and only get-out-of-jail-free card." The woman, realizing that something was not right again, asked them for some identification and their names. They quietly looked at one another, and then just left the store. We all started bursting out into hugs of gratitude and thank yous to this kind woman who had defended our honor and saved us from being wrongfully accused. The woman then briskly walked towards the exit/entrance and locked it, whilst telling us to call our parents. I quickly called my dad and told him what had happened, and he told us to stay put and said he would be right there. You know how I said we lived 15-20 minutes away? Yeah, he got there in less than 10. And once I saw him pull up out in front of the Payless, the woman unlocked the door and walked us outside. She helped us into my dad's expedition and told him what had happened. He got out of the car to speak to her more thoroughly and privately, I believe because they both realized how scared and confused we all were. My dad then thanked our protector and got back into the car. He then proceeded to pull around and park right in front of the Walmart in the offload area right in front of the store. He got out and told me to lock the doors and not open them until he came back. Mind you, my dad played baseball professionally for over a decade and is jacked and 6'4". He's where my siblings and I have gotten the mentality of no one screws with our family, our loved ones, and people that can't defend themselves. He was in there for maybe 20 minutes, and when he exited, I could tell that he was upset and furious. He got in the car quietly and said to the four of us, "Girls, what exactly happened?" We then told him again, more calmly this time. He sat there quietly, as attentive as I've ever seen him, and when we finished, he then spoke. "Girls, no one is working for Walmart tonight that looks as you described, and their only loss prevention manager is a woman who's not even here tonight." He told us that he went in and asked for the manager, and after the threat of a lawsuit, they gathered every employee who was working there at that time to come up to the front. None of them were even close to resembling these men. He also said that he lit the store manager up like a Christmas tree about how they could let something like this happen to 4 children on their premises. I do feel somewhat bad that he yelled at someone who really had nothing to do with the situation, but he was livid. And clearly, he needed to blame someone for what had happened. He then told me next time to call him right away, and that besides that, we did the right thing, and that he was sorry that this happened to us, and that he wasn't able to protect us. He then tried to change the subject and asked us about sports and school ongoings. We became distracted for the remainder of the ride home, and still stopped to get our rented VHS tapes for the night. When we got back to my house, we talked about it amongst ourselves, and none of us had stolen anything. Seriously, no one did. If someone had, they would have come clean for sure by then. Looking back, I'm not quite sure why we didn't call the police. My dad probably realized that there was nothing that they would be able to do. Besides, maybe looking at Walmart's cameras, which may have helped in all honesty. I don't know why we never called the police nor filed a report. Looking back, it kinda seems crazy that we didn't. It just wasn't something that you did back then, I guess. I think my dad just wanted to get us out of there safely, and realized more so than we did how dire of a situation we had narrowly escaped. Looking back, this memory is much more sinister than I initially thought. I always told myself that they were probably lying and didn't want to get in trouble at Walmart, and that they were scared of my dad. But, to be honest, I don't think that was the case at all. First of all, I worked in retail for some years, and employees/loss prevention cannot follow people out of the store, even with proof that they stole something. They're just instructed to call the police immediately. I actually had a store manager when I worked at Lowe's get fired because he chased out someone who stole upwards of $3,000 worth of copper pipes and fittings that they had actually hid in a bathtub's cardboard box. The manager was fired for this. Come to find out, it's a safety precaution because the companies are liable if said employee gets attacked or hurt from the thief on company property. Also, these men were both extremely clean-cut and younger, inconspicuous-looking men. They did not stand out, nor grab one's attention. I mean, us 4 preteen girls didn't notice them following us throughout the Walmart the majority of the time we were there. Nowadays, human trafficking is much more in the forefront of people's minds. After hearing many others' recollections, I remembered this experience and began to look at it more closely with my adult brain. These men did not work for Walmart. They were clearly trying to lure us away. And if it were not for the 2 angel women who, in all actuality, saved us that night, who knows what could have happened. So, if you're out there and you hear this, and you were the woman who stopped me after I paid and put yourself between those 2 men and us girls, I sincerely thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you were the woman who worked at Payless that bravely and fiercely stood up for us and didn't fall for those scumbags' lies, I sincerely am forever grateful to you. To Glasses and the Quiet Man, I truly hope that you both effed around and found out, and were stopped from doing this ever again to anyone. And for both of your sakes, let's not meet. To those that run this podcast, thank you for all that you do, keeping these life events fresh in people's minds, and keeping us safe and aware. I sincerely thank you. And, Bookeyboo, I sincerely thank you for allowing me to tell your story. Hello, Raven. You recently asked for stories, so here are a few from when I worked in a convenience store in Portland, Oregon. This was my second time living in Portland. This time I lived with my brother in Oregon City. I rode a bike back and forth to work. The way there was a steep hill. When I first started, I had to walk part way, and by the end I was able to ride up it at speed. This means I was in good shape. I worked at a small store near Clackamas Community College. The neighborhood was nice, little to no crime that I experienced. In fact, in the time that I worked there, I'd only had 3 incidents. The first is small, and means little to me. A coworker got drunk and screamed at me, while he was off the clock. What I didn't know was that he was living out of his truck, and I had taken a shift from him when I was hired. I had no control over that. It was the manager that did that. I didn't yell back, I just waited until he was done and told him to talk to the manager. Later, that manager called me and asked if I was alright, and yes, I was. She wanted to know if I wanted him fired or something. I said no, that I just didn't want to have to deal with him if he'd been drinking. She thought that was fair enough and left it at that. The second incident was a group of teenagers that tried to do a beer run. If you don't know what that is, I shall explain. A beer run is where you and your friends try to grab as much beer as you can and bolt out the door without paying. Now, these guys backed a truck up to the parking spot at the front door and jumped out. There were 3 of them, and they all went for the display near the front doors. I had told the manager that it was stupid to put a giant beer display so close to the door, so I'd been expecting this. I had locked one of the double doors when I came on. This was standard procedure for the graveyard shift. I also had a can of soup behind the counter that had yet to be put back on the shelf. Watching these guys grab the beer and run to the door, I threw the soup at the first guy. This caused him to go sideways a bit and block the door. This caused the other 2 to run into him. They freaked out and left the beer, running to the truck and taking off. The last incident is a lot more serious. It was an attempted robbery. Now, as I said, I worked the graveyard shift, the most dangerous shift for convenience stores. I need to set the stage. We had a step behind the counter for shorter people, and I always had to move it. I was too tall to use the step and see the customers through the overhead storage that we had. So everyone thought I was shorter than I was. 2, I had cleared most of the counter of extra crap at my boss's request. This left an area where people could put their items and wait next in line. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever seen a person work themselves up to rob a place, but it goes something like this. They wander around the store grabbing items and putting them back, pacing in an aisle, talking to themselves. Generally, they announce what they're going to do. At least, that's what this guy did. My adrenaline was pumping up before he stepped up, but I froze. What I had missed was the gun. The gun that was now in my face literal inches from my forehead. I don't know how long I froze. My brain was on fire. I took stock of everything. Like, I thought this was my last moment, and I wanted to remember it all. The gun was small, but it looked like it could do the job. He didn't wear a mask or face covering at all. He had long arms to get the gun so close to me. He wore a gray shirt and blue jeans. He was sweating profusely, like he was scared. I don't know what he was saying. I know that he was talking, but I couldn't hear him over my heart and my thoughts. I thought that he was not going to leave me alive. No mask, scared as hell. I was dead if I couldn't do something. So I decided to talk. "Are you stupid? I can't give you any cash," I said. "What? Why?" he said as he dropped the gun a bit. There was an opening and I took it. I shifted to the side as I grabbed his arm and pushed the gun back into his face as I hauled him over the counter. I had never acted so fast in my life. It was hands down the most stupid thing that I could have done, but it worked. I could have died that day. Instead, I had the guy laid out on the floor, my foot pressing gently on his throat. Anytime I felt him move, I pressed down. I called the cops and reported the attempted robbery. When the cops got there, I asked them to lock the door. "Aren't you supposed to do that?" the cop responded as he flipped the latch. The other cop pulled out a pen and a notebook. "So, what did he look like?" I looked down at my feet and started describing what I saw. The cop looked at me funny, leaned over the counter and laughed. "Hey, Bill, get a load of this." The first cop looked over the counter and saw the guy on the floor. "Hey, Roger, long time no see." Apparently they knew the guy, and when they checked out his gun, they found it to be empty. So, I got lucky. Very lucky. I would never suggest to anyone to do what I did. I was also suspended from work for 2 weeks, as per company policy. I don't blame them one bit, either. The only reason I did what I did was that I thought I was dead anyways. The first story is a possession story, and the second, a ghost story. As I was coming home from my brother-in-law's house, late at night, maybe around 1 a.m., I had my stepson, a teenager, with me. As usual, we were both in good spirits, making jokes, singing along with the radio, talking about whatever came up, however random or strange someone else might find it. We're about halfway through our 45-ish minute drive when I look at him and he's looking at me like he's afraid of me. Eyes wide, mouth open, gripping his seat, leaning practically through the passenger door, terrified. I turn the radio down and ask if he's okay. He says, "I don't know. Are you?" Which, why wouldn't I be? I tell him I'm fine and ask what's wrong. He asks me if I know where I am. And while I look through the darkness, I notice I'm about 3 to 5 minutes further down the road than I thought. It's a dark mountain road and I'm going slowly. I kind of give him this what the hell look, and he says I was singing, and then he watched a smoke come in the open window, enter my head, and take over. As in I stopped singing mid-song, didn't answer him when he was talking, and just stared blankly ahead driving, still safely. And then after a few minutes the smoke just left my body, and that's where I looked at him sitting there terrified. I don't know if this has ever happened to me before, or since, because I felt fine. I don't have any recollection of the 3 to 5 minutes. No confusion or sense of dread. But I was possessed by something, right? Maybe just an old backwoods ghost that missed driving. It may be something else. I have no choice but to believe him, as A, I'm missing time, B, he would come to me to talk about things openly and honesty, and C, he would never pull it off if it was a prank. He would laugh 4 seconds in. The second one is on the same winding road, and just the two of us again. Closer to home this time, I start hearing a rhythmic metallic sound. For a couple of miles, I can't figure out what. In the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, that could be. I recognize the sound from somewhere. I couldn't place it though. As the miles pass, the sound keeps getting louder and I finally figure out what I think is happening, but it makes no sense. It's the rhythmic tink 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 of pickaxes on rock. Yeah, like the old chain gangs in movies. This is the same road I took to get there. There were no repairs happening, and it's a dirt road. It had been there for quite some time. It's the only road around, and again, it's the middle of the night. The noise keeps getting louder. On the last stretch of the road before home, we climb this big hill, and at the top, there are 3 guys with pickaxes. They look like they're on break, but they aren't in color. They're more like a sepia tone. They look toward the car as we approach, take a step back to give us extra room, and all 3 acknowledge us with either a nod or a slight wave. What's that called when an event leaves a spiritual impact on an area? That's what it had to have been. Residual energy, I think. I'm a believer in fate and luck. If it's going to happen to you, nothing is going to stop it. However, one of my former work colleagues has the opposite view that nothing can predict your future, even after what happened to him. He gets up for work at still dark o'clock, leaves home at the same time, sees the same people in roughly the same place every day on his way to work, until one day he was late by 2 minutes leaving his house. As he walked along, the usual cyclist passed him, and then came the car, and to quote Meatloaf, it was going like a bat out of hell. It swerved past the cyclist, hit the road island, flipped, crashed back to the pavement, before finishing its trip upside down in the middle of the road. On telling me this story, he pointed out that where the car hit the pavement was where he would have been walking if he'd been on time. So, what delayed you? I asked. After some thought, he said, the bin hadn't been put out for collection, so I went and took it out, which took 2 minutes. So that, my friends, was a collection of true scary stories from you. You being my listeners, my subscribers, the amazing people who show this channel and podcast so much love and support. All of these stories came to me from a listener. A different listener each story in this case, obviously, but they all came to me from, again, you guys. So, without you, this video wouldn't exist. So I guess in that sense, I owe each and every single one of you a huge thank you. As if I wouldn't just say thank you anyways, you all know I'm super grateful for all of you, you know that. But, seriously, thank you to everyone who did send me their stories, and the stories in this video. Really good stuff. Fantastic grab bag of stories. I love doing these, I really do, so. If you have stories that you don't think would fit in with anything else, please do feel free to send them in, because I like doing these collections, and if they don't fit in with something else, they go in one of these. So, yeah. So again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who listened to this point. If you did, you're amazing. Go ahead and comment that down below. Comment, Raven, I'm amazing. Or just, I'm amazing. You don't have to put Raven in it. Just comment that you are amazing. That you, not me, you are amazing. Comment whatever you want. You can also like the video if you did enjoy the stories, and subscribe if you're new to the channel and liked what you heard. There's also the super thanks, which is a tip to the channel, just a donation, just a bit of extra support, if you will. Never expected, always appreciated. You can also join Patreon memberships to get early access to content like this, so long as it goes up early. I'm behind again today. I'm sorry. Yeah. Nothing much really else to say. It's Thursday. It's Friday. It's not Thursday. What the hell? I'm tired. I'm tired. My throat's doing some fun stuff today. I think I'm having some allergy issues, but is what it is. Took some medication. It'll kick in. Now that I'm done recording, of course. Yeah. I hope you're all having a beautiful day. I hope I do see you again here very soon. And I hope you remember you are loved. You are valid. You are important. You're the best you that you could be. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise, and please don't forget it. And, of course, until I see you again, my friends, much love, and sleep well.